I was hugely impressed by the movie when I saw it when I was a teenager. You know, it had a very anti-authoritarian feel to it, and I really, really liked that. And I think, you know, times have become a little more darker and a little more cynical, and I think people are more anti-authoritarian than they were in the 90s, which kind of makes, I think, this the right time to kind of make a movie like Death Race. Well, I don't really see this movie as a remake. I think it's more of a reimagining. We take some of the same characters and some of the same themes and concepts, but we tell a completely different story. In many ways, I see my movie as a prequel to the original film. In that movie, the death race is the national sport of America. In my film, we kind of tell the genesis of the death race, where it's more of a kind of gritty underground race. You know, if you've seen the original movie, I think you can see how this movie fits into a timeline as a prequel. But if you haven't seen the original movie, I don't think it matters. I think this movie stands on its own 2 feet. I was very influenced by a lot of research I did on ancient Rome. You know, I really felt that these were the modern-day gladiators. Only instead of kind of fighting in a coliseum, they were fighting in this prison arena. But they were prisoners, and they were potentially fighting for their freedom, and they were fighting to the death for the entertainment of a mass audience. So I found it was a very interesting parallel between what was happening 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome and the way that I saw kind of reality television going today. I thought it was more powerful to kind of leave the idea of what this slightly futuristic world looked like up to the audience's imagination. I wanted to put the audience in the seat of the car. I didn't want to kind of put them in the outside world. And I felt that by having the movie kind of hermetically sealed within this prison island, it just increased the intensity of it as well. It kind of put you more in kind of Jason Statham's point of view. So that's the reason why we never step outside the prison and kind of show the outside world watching. It was a joy. I mean, he's really, firstly, he's a great guy, but secondly, he's so committed. I mean, he worked so hard on this movie. He worked out like crazy. I mean, the guy got down to like 7% body fat. I mean, he was so committed, he was so focused. He did all of his own fight scenes. He did nearly all of his own stunt driving. You know, he's completely fearless. And I love that from an actor, because for a director, if someone's willing to kind of go drive a car at 70 miles an hour and do really crazy stuff, I don't think I could do it, but he did. And that's on film, and that's in the movie, and I think it really adds to the reality of the film. Joan was interesting because I wrote the role for her, and I went to go and see her in New York and had a cup of tea with her, and by the time we'd finished our cup of tea, she'd committed to the movie. And I think what really excited her was, in mainstream Hollywood movies, the villain is never a woman. But in our movie, the villain is a woman. And also for Joan Allen, who has 3 Oscar nominations and usually plays a good girl in her movies, I think she really liked the idea of playing the ultimate bad girl. We did everything practically in the movie, so we used a lot of cameras because we weren't using very much computer-generated imagery. You know, we wanted reality rather than creating the races in a computer. So sometimes we shot up to 15 cameras on certain stunts because we only wanted to do it once. You know, the stunts were very expensive and very dangerous to do, so we didn't want to do them over and over again. So we used a lot of cameras, and we killed a lot of cameras. No one got hurt during the making of the movie, but we killed a lot of cars and we killed a lot of cameras. There's no video game for the movie, and I'll tell you why, is that I'm a big video game fan, and the last thing I would want is a kind of a cheap cash-in video game to go with my movie. And when you make a movie, you can make a very good movie in 18 months. To make a very good video game takes 3 or 4 years. So I didn't want to rush a video game just to have one to release at the same time as the film. So hopefully there will be a video game of Death Race, but it'll be a few years down the line. I'm producing a movie called Pandorum right now, which is a science fiction horror movie that stars Dennis Quaid and Ben Foster that will come out early next year. We're also going into production with a movie version of Castlevania, which is based upon the video game. And then for me as a director, I'm adapting The Long Good Friday, which is a 1970s gangster movie from Great Britain, which is well known within Great Britain, but hasn't really reached a wider audience. So I want to kind of tell that story, but tell it to a more mainstream audience. So I'm in a very kind of 1970s part of my career right now. I drove all the cars in the movie. They're terrifying, I got to tell you. And I really respect Jason for getting behind the wheel and doing a lot of his own stunts. Because the thing about these cars are, although you can go and buy a Mustang or you can go and buy a Porsche, by the time we put all the armor plating on them and put the heavy machine guns on them, the cars didn't handle like normal cars. They were so heavy that when you hit the brake, the car would just keep on going. So they were very, very difficult to drive. And also, because of the armor plating, they had very reduced visibility, which again made them very challenging. And also the thing about where we were shooting the movie is we weren't shooting on a traditional racetrack. If you lose control of a car and you're on like a Formula One track, you kind of spin off and maybe end up in a field. If you lose control of a car on the death race track, you probably hit a metal girder or a huge lump of concrete, or you hit a metal girder, then a huge lump of concrete, and then you fall in a river. So it was very, very dangerous, and it was very exciting to drive the cars, but very scary.
Sounds really amazing. Thank you so much for coming. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.